It's my pleasure to call this January 7th meeting of Wildlife and Fisheries to order. Commissioner Blanchard, would you be kind enough?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Miss Susan.
Bill Hogan,
Here.
Gary Smithrow absent, Andrew Blanchard.
Here.
Jay Corbill,
Here.
Jessica Gidry.
Here.
Joe McPherson,
Here.
Alvin Sari.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, there are 6 commissioners in attendance and we have a quorum. Deputy Secretary Rob Shadowin is present for Secretary Bonestad.
Thank you. Here, a motion to adopt the December 3rd commission minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Move to approve the agenda, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Commission special announcements and personal privilege. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. You'll notice sitting at the table today by Susan is David Boggs. Garrett, our general counsel, as well as Secretary Montese, has had some experience with COVID. While they don't have COVID, they are staying clear of other people. So Mr. Boggs is filling in for Mr. Garrett. Also on a personal note, Sam Barbera, who used to work here at Fisheries, was assistant executive director of the foundation and then became executive director, died yesterday. He had served his country. He was back working militarily related. He had served his state. Sam made an indelible impression on his service to the people in our state and Sportsman's Paradise. And if you deem it appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate a moment of silence in remembrance and thanksgiving for Sam Barbera.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Corbill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Shadowin. That was very fitting. I knew Sam. I know he was an incredible asset. One thing I really appreciated about Sam was his appreciation for the resources this state has and his love of it and his dedication to the sportsmen and sportswomen of this state. And he'll be sorely missed. Hope God will be with his family in this tough time.
Thank you, Commissioner Corbill.
Hey,
Commissioner Guidry.
To add to that, Sam and I worked together at the East Baton Rouge District Attorney's Office. His wife's my first assistant. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Sansari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, Mr. Boggs, are you related to Hale Boggs and Lindy Boggs?
Unknown, but if we are, it's about 4th or 5th cousins.
Okay, just wanted to ask. They were neighbors of mine and their family knew them pretty well. Secondly, I wanted to just bring up an issue about trip tickets and my concern with trip tickets, and that because of my concern and the inability to get information very quickly, I'm going to take this time to recommend once again that we consider formally as a commission and a department to move toward doing electronic trip tickets. I just believe we've hit that point to where you are going to be able to manage resources so much easier when you have immediate data available both biologically and enforcement wise. Environmental conditions can show a lot of things, finding out where the fish or wildlife are being hunted and or fished, I think can help determine what conditions are causing these movements of things around. And your resources could be spent better analyzing that data that's immediate. And with that said, I just wanted to take this opportunity again to do it because I wanted to get some information on landings and all, and it's very difficult to do because of the way that we've been dealing with it. That legislation came about in 2000 and actually 1999, and then was redone in 2000. And the technology is there to update what we're doing and make it better and to move forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Enforcement Division report, Major Skinner.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Happy New Year to you all. I hope you all had wonderful holidays for you guys and your families as well. For the month of December, we had 7 boating incidents, 4 injuries, and 1 fatality, 915 written citations, 232 written warnings, and 13 public assists. As usual, I have a synopsis of some cases that were made last month. Enforcement agents arrested a Generette man in St. Mary Parish for using crab traps without required markings, destroying legal crab traps or removing contents from crab traps, theft of crab traps, and taking or possessing immature female crabs. The investigation revealed that the subject took crab traps from numerous commercial fishermen within the Côte Blanche Bay area without permission and placed them into his own crab trap line. The subject was also observed tending and moving numerous stolen crab traps during the course of the investigation. Agents seized 24 crates of crabs and returned them to the water. Agents also seized 122 crab traps, of which 14 were untagged and 108 belonged to 27 different commercial fishermen. 2 subjects in 2 separate investigations were cited for illegal cervid carcass importation in November and December in West Monroe. One of the subjects was cited for 2 counts of the ban when it was discovered that he harvested 2 antler deer in Arkansas and then transported them back whole across the state line into Louisiana. The other subject was charged with 3 counts when it was discovered that he killed 3 antler deer in Arkansas and transported them back whole across state lines as well. Arkansas Game and Fish also cited the last subject for taking over the limit of antler deer in a season in violation of the Lacey Act because he transported illegally harvested deer across state lines. LDWF agents seized all of those deer that were associated with that investigation. 4 Terrebonne Parish residents were cited for taking oysters from a polluted area in Terrebonne Parish. An enforcement agent was on patrol in the area known as Point of Shin when he observed 2 vessels with 2 occupants, each dredging for oysters in a polluted area. The agent seized 29 sacks of oysters and returned them to the water and placed the vessels and dredge under a court order seizure form. In addition to the criminal fines and possible incarceration, the department shall revoke the violator's oyster harvester license for 1 year for the first offense, 3 years for the second offense, and 10 years for the third offense. During the time the violator's oyster harvester license is revoked on a first offense, the violator can only be present on an oyster vessel that is equipped with a vessel monitoring device. For the second and third offense, the violator cannot be present on any vessel harvesting oysters during their time that their license is revoked. This concludes the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner McPherson.
Major, I noticed quite a few confiscations of deer. Can you remind us what happened? I know those deer are supposed to be donated to charity, correct?
If You're not talking about the carcass importation ban.
No, sir.
Just
I'm,
if it's fit for consumption, we generally try to give that to, at the very minimum, some sort of needy group, either a family or an organization that provides to those needy people.
we try to do that. What happens, there's some instances where we can't get it to someone?
Sometimes it's unfit for consumption. We may come into contact with it. It hasn't been on refrigeration. It might not be safe to do so. There are times when you just cannot find a group of people that want it.
I guess that's why I'm asking the question. I watch a reality show. I think the name of it is North Law. It's where these enforcement agents talk funny. And they're out there doing different things, a little bit different than the way we do it. But one of the things I picked up on, evidently, they're allowed as part of their penalty to charge the violator for having that deer processed. And it seems like that would be a much better thing is if we had processing plants that was willing to accept the animal. They would process it, the violator would be paid, and then we could orderly distribute that to the food pantries or whoever needs it.
I see what you're saying.
Who cleans a deer now? You got an agent, he's out there, he catches a night hunter. Who cleans that deer now?
It depends. Sometimes the agents will do it, especially if it's someone who wants the deer and they don't have the means to do it or they're unable to clean it. From time to time, agents will do that. They'll donate their time and clean the animal for them. Some places accept it whole. There are a number of food pantries, organizations that provide food to needy people. Sometimes that those folks or those organizations actually have people on staff that are willing to do it.
Okay, I guess my observation would be that it doesn't sound like that we've got a uniform policy or procedure, and I'd really like to see if we could research being able to take and charge the violator that the animal is confiscated from for the cost of processing that animal.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, we'd have to see how it would, because there are a lot of times that we're already charging them civil restitution for the replacement value of the animal. So then we would have to add this on top of that. And I would think that would probably be part of the criminal violation. And we would have to have district attorneys and judges that were on board adding that fee.
I'm just asking y'all to look at it and report back to us what you find. What would it take as far as change in the statutes and our regulations, but to where we could accomplish that, to where we had a set procedure that we knew when we have these confiscation of game and fish, that there's an orderly process or policy in place to be able to make sure that those animals and fish are getting to groups that could utilize it.
Okay, I get it. We do, and of course, we do have some standard operating procedure that we go through, that we make every attempt to donate animals. It's not that there's not some sort of guidance to the agents in the field.
Well, that would be a good start, is maybe get that to the commissioners, what that SOP policy is.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
To expand on that, I'm pretty certain that the deer processors, a lot of deer processors have a program where if I had an extra deer, I can bring it to them, certain ones, and they'll process it and make it available to donate to folks that are in need. I seem to recall a list. Actually, I'm certain I saw a list because I think we had a presentation of that program here maybe during the summer. I probably have it still in my files, but it might be worth looking into if part of the SOP as you guys, as it evolves, maybe can take some of that confiscated deer meat or deer in general. Because my understanding of the program, and they're selected across the state, if I remember, and there's a list of them. They'll accept the deer, process it, and then donate it to different, families or folks that are in need. So it might be worth looking into that too. It's not a Hunters for the Hungry, but they have their own little acronym, and it's a list that I know I saw because I read it, of people across the state, deer processors that will do that for nothing. If a hunter brings them a deer, I don't see what would be different if an animal is in suitable condition to be shared with those folks. But that might be something to consider looking into.
Part of our consideration on that, as you described it, is the legality of donating something of value, which protein, meat, fish has a value, whether you can just give it to a process and then let him decide where it's going to go.
I think they addressed that though. I have to find it because I remember looking at it in the summertime, but they got their act together, this group of processors, and they jumped through all the hoops.
Yeah, that's great. If
Did the
that's
whole
available,
9
that'll be
yards.
part of what y'all will be looking at.
It might be a good spot for those that aren't accepted by somebody more local.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to give the Department of Enforcement kudos on these oyster violators that y'all guys have been finding and prosecuting, because they are working with the prosecutors to prosecute, because work in polluted areas and trying to serve a product that consumed raw is just terrible. And the one thing that I would request, I don't know if there's any way to do it, if it's possible, but, finding out who's buying or, these oysters is also an issue. I know as a oyster processor and dealer, we got a 145-year-old company, and I know that we know all the people that we buy from. And it's really important to know where they're actually working. And people that will buy willy-nilly from people, at the least that's what I call it, because it just shouldn't happen. And if there's any way the department could, through investigation, work toward trying to find out who is, and educating some kind of way these processes and or first dealers about this and how important it is and what it can mean to our state when you allow for the sale and distribution of polluted oysters. That would be, I think, a great thing. I don't know if y'all are able to, though.
We can give it a shot.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank y'all really for doing that, because it's very important, that work.
Thank you, Major Skinner. Agenda item number 8, presentation on development of Louisiana National Estuarine Research Reserve. Morgan Crutcher with the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities and Dr. Robert Twilley, Louisiana Sea Grant.
Good morning. Give me a second. So I appreciate the opportunity to present this and putting us on the agenda this morning. And this is an introduction to a program that's just getting started. This takes several years to process. So we want to introduce it today, and I'm sure there'll be other follow-ups as questions come up and as this program matures. This is an effort to develop a national estuarine research reserve in Louisiana. And what you'll notice from the map is that we are the only coastal state that does not have one. And so there are reasons why we think at Sea Grant and at the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities that this is something that really has value to the state. And that's what I want to sort of lay on the talk and discuss with you today, is that value proposition. So what is a NER? A NER is actually, this National Estuarine Research Reserve it's a partnership with NOAA. It's a program that's run out of NOAA. But it's actually managed by the state. So it's a state federal government partnership. It's much like Sea Grant. We are the exact same thing, where we are a program where we're funded by NOAA, but we actually are managed by the state, and we actually are managed to provide services to the state. And so this program by NOAA, which is in a different division of NOAA than Sea Grant, is actually a program to provide education and resources relative to also promoting research activities by helping develop facilities in the state to actually add a place that's designated as a estuarine research reserve. And so these are protected areas that use state regulations relative to what these areas are used for. And they also, again, would be areas where facilities would be located, and NOAA would help connect that site to a national network. And much again, like Sea Grant, we are part of 34 Sea Grant programs across the nation. I sit twice a year with Sea Grant directors across the nation. And the reason I bring that up is because by connecting us to this national network, we get to tell our story at the national level. And many times that is a problem for us here in Louisiana because we're not the Chesapeake Bay, we're not the Everglades. Our story is very unique. Our Delta is very unique. Our natural resources are very unique. And so being connected to this national system gives us that opportunity of telling that story at a national level. What's the mission of a program like this? One, you'll recognize stewardship, research, training, and education. These are the missions that many of us share already. Sea Grant shares it. Barataria Terrebonne National Estuarine Program shares it. Wildlife and Fisheries Department, our state agencies share these missions. So, I get the question, well, what's unique? Why are we interested in adding this to the state? And I'll go back to two perspectives. One is, again, it's an avenue for facilities for us to enhance programs that we already have. It's programs we have at Sea Grant, programs we have at Wildlife and Fisheries, and others. This enables us to enhance those programs. And then it also, again, through having facilities and having connections at the national level, we get to take our information, the monitoring programs, the characteristics of our Delta, and we get to tell that story at the national level so that people can understand more about our problems here and issues in coastal Louisiana. So I want to emphasize that this is a place. It's not a program. Sea Grant's a program. This is a place. This is a place where we actually can build facilities and focus on the characteristics and the missions that I just described. I'm showing you here two facilities, one in Texas, in which they developed around their University of Texas Marine Lab and added boardwalks. They have what they call a floating classroom that takes kids out and doing educational programs. And then on the bottom picture on the right is Grand Bay. If you've ever had a chance to get off of I-10 on the way to Gulf Shores and take a visit to Grand Bay. It's a fabulous facility, again, with the education and research programs that enhances the mission there in Mississippi. So what is a NER when you say it's a physical space? Well, it's a combination of taking state lands that have existing management programs and adding those state lands with state waters and offering that to NOAA as a place to designate as a National Estuarine Research Reserve. The one I'm showing you here, Weeks Bay, is a really good example where they took state parks, took those lands in red, took the state waters, and designated that as a National Estuarine Research Reserve. The one in the middle, Mission Aransas, they took existing state lands. They had to cookie cut out navigation issues. They had to take and make sure they had right-of-ways that were protected for oil and gas. And they were able to compromise those issues over, again, having a combination of lands to build facilities to enhance these education and research programs. And then I'm showing you Apalachicola Bay as another example. We've taken these examples and applied them across our state, and we've come up with 6 locations, what we call estuarine zones, that we are considering in a long, very diligent process of looking at their merits to be a National Estuarine Research Reserve. We are in the initial stages of evaluating those 6 sites. We do not have a site selected yet. That will take a lot of vetting through a lot of organizations and a lot of groups before we start to think about nominating or actually have a package to nominate to NOAA as a potential National Estuarine Research Reserve. We get a lot of questions. I think what I'd like to do is just go through a couple of these because these are very common, frequently asked questions when you talk about a program like this, particularly a federal-state partnership type programs. You know, will the state have to purchase land for Louisiana Reserve? The answer is no. The idea is to take existing state lands and waters and packaging that into what we would consider a reserve that would meet the qualifications of NOAA to designate as a National Estuarine Research Reserve. Does it bring in more rules and regulations? The key, again, is that we would take our existing regulations on state lands that we would submit as a proposal, and no additional rules would be added, but NOAA would look at that to see if in fact it passes the qualifications of a NER. So this is a really important point, and one that I know will go through a lot of vetting. When I say vetting this over the next several years, this will be one that will do a lot of clear research and review so that all parties are agreement, both the state and the federal, the NOAA program, on how we would operate this National Estuarine Research Reserve. What about the process? The process, there are 6 steps. The first is the state has to submit a letter to NOAA saying we even want to do this. We did that. Governor Edwards submitted a letter. NOAA accepted the letter, said, please move forward. So we are now in the process of actually nominating a site that we will submit to NOAA to be considered. But once you do that in step 2, that's only just the beginning. You have to go through an environmental impact statement. You have to develop a management plan. Who's going to manage the reserve? How will it actually be organized and managed related to how state lands and state waters are used to meet the mission of the National Estuarine Research Reserve? So to do that, we have a leadership team, GOCA and Sea Grant, together with a NOAA partnership. We have a site development committee, has 80 members on it. This is the technical review. We have and then a site evaluation committee that will make the final selection so that we have some of a firewall between the groups that developing the sites and the final evaluation that will be relative to nominating it to NOAA. Again, we have 6 zones. We go through a screening criteria. We look at what merits these different zones have. And if your question is, well, what are you using as your guidelines? What are your criteria? Well, we first start with what NOAA provides us. They provide a guidelines that relative to what they would like to see in the estuarine research reserves. We modify those because we are a delta. So we have a very unique set of criteria, different types of habitats, different use of our resources, and those all have to be incorporated into the management plan. So they're in 4 areas, as I just stated here. And again, these 4 areas of criteria fit right with the mission that I described. You know, how representative is our landscape relative to being unique, and of course, being a Mississippi River Delta, that's pretty straightforward. What's our value of this site for research monitoring and resource protection? What's the value of the site for education and interpretation? I'm going to tell you as a Sea Grant director, this is one that I really highlight. For us to have a site where we can get school kids out and see our coast and see what we're doing and our challenges and our issues, we think is a real opportunity. And then also for further acquisition and management considerations, the 4th criteria. I'm going to show you some maps real quick and wrap this up. You know, here's some, and this is what we're doing. The phase we're in right now is we've just finished a real intense development of mapping for each of the 6 zones that we're considering. And in those maps, as you'll see here in a second, we're including attributes and assets at each of these zones that fit the criteria. Here, these maps, you can't see them very well, but I'd be glad to provide these in more detail to you. Really, what these maps show are where are the public lands and where are the state waters that could actually possibly be used to develop an estuarine research reserve. Then we look at the different habitat types in each of these zones and evaluate how diverse they are to represent a delta estuary. And then we look at sites relative to the research and monitoring potential. A large part of this is an already existing extensive monitoring program that's managed both by the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, but also in the estuaries, but also the CRIMS, Coastwide Reference Monitoring Stations. These two monitoring programs give us a lot of I think something that's an advantage that other states don't have that can really build a very high quality estuarine research reserve. And then this one is really important because what's the location of the site relative to schools? Yeah, what's the proximity of the site to actually having school kids spend the day down at this reserve, get out on a boat, see the resources, and develop these very aggressive education programs. So to finish a couple slides here, one of the things that is NOAA highlights in their guidelines is public engagement. This is a critical part of this developing these programs. So to do that, we have two things that I want to mention. One, we're in the phase right now, as we call our public roadshow. And in the audience or here on the commission, we have a presentation. We have a way for you to sign up. We would love to give your organizations a 20-minute presentation, Rotary clubs, NGOs, other groups that you're a member of, so we can talk and show you more about this program. So we're in the midst of being very progressive or being very active in developing that roadshow over the next several months. And then as we start to clarify exactly which areas have the most merit to develop a near site, we will go develop town hall meetings and go to those communities and talk to them about the merits of these sites and look for public and stakeholder engagement. I'll tell you a quick story. In a couple of places on the Great Lakes, or one particular location on the Great Lakes, it came down to two sites. And the site that was selected was largely because the mayor who stood up and said, we want this site in our town. This is something that's important to us and we're going to make a commitment. And so that, it's not so much the ecology and the technology that decides on where these sites are located, it's the public engagement. And we want to highlight that in our process. So as you can see, we've kicked off with NOAA. We had our kickoff meeting in December. Again, we're in the phase of road shows to talk to the public about this process. We're developing candidate sites, where potentially could we locate a site, have town hall meetings. This is all just to get a nomination, which is just step 2. And so after we nominate a site, we go through a whole nother engagement process of vetting this through crossing the T's and dotting the I's and making sure all the legal aspects and that the state is fully committed to the merits and the mission of a National Estuarine Research Reserve, as well as defining who's going to manage it, what state, because this is managed by the state. It's just like our Sea Grant program. It's not managed by NOAA. It's managed by our group here in Louisiana. So, and it's done that way so that we meet the needs of Louisiana, not the needs of NOAA. And so so we have a website. You go to the Sea Grant website. You'll see a little. I can't see this very well. It's Google Sea Grant Louisiana, and it's at LASeagrant.org is our website. If you click on the Lanier, we're calling it Louisiana National Estuarine Research Reserve. So it's called the Lanier. There's a button just to our left of our Sea Grant icon. And we have a web page that has information on the national program. It has presentations that we're making recorded, as well as PowerPoint that you can look at related to our efforts here in the state. We have frequently asked questions, and we have a Facebook and Twitter and other social media. But I want to emphasize this part of our website when you open it up, the virtual roadshow. You can click on that roadshow button, and a form will come up so you can fill in your organization and schedule a roadshow for us to come meet with your group. And I will stop there and be glad to take any questions.
Commissioner Sunseri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Twillie. Appreciate your presentation. I think it's very interesting, but I have a couple of questions about, number one, funding. How is there a cost match? Is NOAA, the federal government, going to pay for the whole thing?
Right. So it's a good question. So it's a little different than our state Sea Grant program. Our state Sea Grant program has a 50% match. The Lanier program is a 30% match. And so there is a state requirement that can be in kind and not just cash. So it would be, I know a lot of states, what they do is, I'll use Rickery Bay. That's where I did my dissertation, and it's the National Estuarine Research Reserve. So I have a real, I guess one of my interest in seeing one here is I saw the benefits of that National Estuarine Research Reserve in Rickery Bay. It's run by the Department of Marine Resources, by the state, and their state employees that run that reserve are part of their in-kind contribution.
Okay, so existing facilities that are in these 6
Yeah, so
areas.
the NOAA will fund facilities, and there's a different match on the facilities that, but they will put up some monies for building the facilities.
But, so are there, on these 6 sites, are there existing facilities?
We're looking at that. That's one of the criteria as far as merits when we look at these 6 zones and what sites may start to rise up to being ones that we want to submit, is because they have existing facilities of which we're adding infrastructure to and making it even better. So that is one of the criteria.
Who would have to maintain that, or would that be part of the 30% match, or would the state and the citizens have to pay for it, or the department if it was a department?
Yeah, so the budget on these, each Estuarine Research Reserve gets about, right now they're getting about $100,000 a year each for operations and maintenance on the reserves. And then the state, through their match of 30% to that, it adds to that operations and maintenance. So it is a cost share agreement, but about 75 to 100,000 comes from NOAA.
And then I guess lastly, I hadn't studied to see these sites, but are they WMAs? Are they
WMAs
refuges? Will it impact hunting, recreational, or commercial fishing that may be allowed in those areas? Would it impact those activities?
The discussions right now, and again, this is really preliminary, is that, you do the merits of a site is the presence of state lands. Many of those state lands are wildlife management areas or refuges. Federal refuges, you're only allowed 50% of your public lands to be federal refuges because they want this to be a state agreement, not an agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it does require, having those state lands. But the way that, in our discussions, and NOAA has been in these discussions with us step by step, we've made it very clear, and they make it very cleir, that the way this process works is we take existing regulations, let's say for a WMA, and that goes in the application package to be evaluated. It's not changed, it's not modified. It's taken those existing regulations. Now, NOAA has the option of saying that does not meet the criteria. But, you know, I mean, and you know, if it gets to some point that, you know, our approach to this is we're going to use our existing regulations. We're not going to change the regulations. We're going to submit it in the package that already exists. Weeks Bay, if you ever drive over the bridge, taking a shortcut to Gulf Shores during the summer, it is the boat launch is packed. Public access is encouraged in these, and so public recreation is something that's embraced in the package and evaluated by NOAA. So, you know, we're not anticipating making any request to change any regulations on WMAs in these application packages.
Okay, that's good, because, you know, you got constituents that, you know, like.
It would be
to
suicide for
utilize
Sea
a
Grant
lot
to get
of
involved in something like
areas,
that.
And you don't want to eliminate their ability to do what they're accustomed to doing. And I know this department's strapped and on, you know, trying to be able to get any actual cash, you know, to do it. I understand with, you know, getting the match, utilizing the properties and the existing stuff, but, you know, no matter what, that still has a cost to it.
Yeah, without a
And,
doubt.
you know, we'd probably be, at least I would be in favor of looking to get some money to help allow for that activity. I'm all in favor of educating kids. We do it as a business and have done it in my 42 years annually multiple times. I've done it, you know, through Oyster Task Force stuff over the years and through our Gulf Oyster Industry Council stuff, where we do a lot of educational activities for young people from the grammar school level all the way to university level.
And we have existing facilities right now that do education and outreach activities along the coast. And those would be factored in as to, is this something that we can use to enhance those and improve those? And so that's our strategy, is to be a value added and try to, and that's also cost effective if you do it that way.
Oh, look, thank you very much for it. I think it's a very interesting concept, and thank you.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Yeah. Mr. Morgan, my concern over, when I look at the map of what y'all selected, you know, for all the state, when I look at this and I look at what you just said, that all of this development that y'all have would become wildlife management area. If we put these rules in effect that we have in WMAs, you know, in the state of Louisiana, that's federally, we going to destroy our commercial fisheries totally right here. Because if the commercial fisheries have to abide by the same rules that we have that's in place in the state with WMAs, our commercial fisheries will not exist according to these maps that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
You know, right here. And, you know, you're going to start a war with the commercial fisheries, you know, whether it's crabbing, you know, shrimping, oyster fishermen, you know, you may even start a war with recreational fishermen, you know, in the state of Louisiana, because, you know, that's a lot of broad area that they're looking at right here. And maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, I'd like to explain that.
I'm just trying to divert a very big controversy right
Yeah,
here.
well, first of all, I mean, anything like that would be against the mission of Sea Grant. And anybody who knows Sea Grant, we would never get engaged in something like that. That restricts the commercial and recreational fishing, because that's just, our mission is to enhance it. And this is why we're doing the roadshow and trying to get out in front of the public. The lines around those maps are what we call generalized boundaries. And all they are just to say, okay, here is an area within this boundary. We want to look for state public lands and waters to consider to be a National Estuarine Research Reserve. Those are not boundaries. They're just generalized, here's a zone. In fact, we call them zones and not sites. So it would not be where you would take a law that's applied to, say, a WMA in a very specific location and apply that across an entire zone. That's not the intent here. It's to look for potential sites that we can put together, much like the map for Weeks Bay, and then that would constitute a National Estuarine Research Reserve. Because it's just, you're right. I mean, it's just unreasonable to think that you could expanding and contracting regulations is not part of this program. We would never get involved in that. It's just, and it's largely, it's just, it would be dead on arrival if we try to get something like that approved by the state, and let alone what NOAA would say. It would never get out of the state. And so the state has to approve this application package before it goes to NOAA. And everything that exists as far as regulations on any parcel of land is what we would use, and there would be, it's not to expand or contract any of those. And that's a commitment that we're trying to make right up front, so that, because it is one of the number one concerns that I hear when we talk about this program.
Thank you.
Commissioner Corwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Twilley, you have a lot of references to the Mississippi River Delta. Obviously, as you know, in the West, that's the Cheniere Plain. Are you guys going to try and, I mean, if this is an education effort, we probably need to tell everybody that the whole state isn't a Delta. So maybe if you guys can incorporate that.
Yeah, I get in trouble with this a lot because I do consider Cheniere Plains part of the deltas.
It's part of the system, but it's clearly a unique area.
I understand.
We can get down into semantics today if we want, but that was just something that struck me. But more importantly, I'm fairly familiar with NOAA and have had a meaningful amount of experience with them. And you kind of touched on it, but I'm curious about their actual goals of this.
Yeah.
What do they want? Because there's a lot of things NOAA wants that aren't always in the best interest of everybody, at least in my view.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, could you allude to or expand on what NOAA's actual goals of this program are?
This program is, like I said earlier, it's out of the Coastal Zone Management Division of NOAA. It's not in the Ocean and Atmospheric. Sea Grant, we're in the Ocean and Atmospheric Research Division. So a lot of our emphasis in Sea Grant is getting research dollars out and developing an extension service. The Coastal Zone Management Group, a large part of, when you go back and look at the original development of this program back in the mid-70s, it had two goals. One is to develop a research program that could compare estuaries across the nation so that they could help provide guidance to either regulatory or other education programs as to how our coastal zone works and the diversity, that everyone is not the same. And so and that's why I think I use the term telling our story, because we would be participating in that. The second part, and I think that fits that coastal zone management initiative of NOAA, is, managing these resources, we need to understand how they work and their diversity. And that's, and the reason I mention that, again, you can't see on these maps, they use this approach, what they call biogeographic regions. And in our application, we have to define why we are unique to be added to the system. And that uniqueness and that diversity is, and gives them added value to compare how different estuaries across the nation work. So that's one of the major goals. The second one is the education outreach. The Coastal Zone Management Program has a very strong commitment to education and outreach, and an informed public really starts to understand then why we're trying to manage the resources the way we are. So I think that is why you see the missions described the way they are.
I guess I'm going to take a cheap shot while I have the mic, but maybe that education and outreach could be to their own staff, and the regulatory side would be a good start. But I have one other question. When I look at these dots and I look at the publicly owned areas, those publicly owned areas were purchased with waterfowl money, waterfowl-based money. And my concern is, as you incorporate NOAA, I think it's clear where my feelings on NOAA are without me saying, I would be concerned if I was managing any of those WMA's refuges or federal refuges, and I would argue that some of them currently are not being managed for the principal cause that they were originally purchased for. So bringing in this, I think it's going to be a challenge to sell to the public at large, if you will, that we're not going further down a path that takes it away from its original mission as to why it was purchased and broadening it. And look, I know that's the new MO for the federal government on these publicly owned areas. I mean, I understand the plight of the butterfly and all these other different species that aren't really big economic contributors to purchasing these land masses. But that's something that I think you're going to get a little bit of a pushback, and you guys are going to have to be prepared to deal with and provide answers. Because I would say, about 15, 20 years ago, they had a reemphasis on managing for waterfowl in a lot of, particularly the federal areas. And that sense has waned, and it varies. And I think when you guys come barging through the door with a pile of money, folks are going to be a little suspicious in that regard. So I applaud you on your task. The only other thing I would add, I always hope that Calcasieu estuarine zone would reach over. It doesn't look like it does, but maybe reach over towards Rockefeller Refuge, because I would argue that there's not a finer field laboratory on the planet than that place. And I think that those guys have done, actually your program in particular has done an incredible amount to educate kids coming through that program, and some of the stuff that Mark Shirley has done.
Marsh Maneuvers is a 30-year
has
history.
been incredible. And when I look at the federal refuges that are in the other areas, access is a real challenge, except maybe on the west side of Calcasieu Lake. But those are my main two comments. I'm obviously a waterfowl guy. I like to catch as many fish and eat as many fish and shellfish as I can. But these places have a significant challenge, and this year being a year like it is with regards to waterfowl and the damages, particularly in the Cheniere Plain, and the amount of forage and habitat we have on the landscape for waterfowl, bringing in a pot of money from an organization that, particularly in their regulatory side, has not been overly accommodating into what I would consider maintaining that Cheniere Plain system is going to be a bit of a challenge. I hope you guys can overcome it, particularly if you can educate the regulatory side as to why these areas need to stay like they are. And there are some things that can be done. And I know you know Leanne Sharp well, but what she's done through CPRA on managing the Cameron Creole watershed, I think is a perfect balance between how you can accommodate marine organisms and all the other species that depend on those habitats. So best of luck to you guys.
Good points. Very well taken.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Agenda item number 9, received update on feral hog control in Louisiana, Dr. Rusty Berry.
Good morning. I'm Rusty Berry, veterinarian for the department. I'm here filling in for Dr. LaCour, who couldn't be here today. Unfortunately, had broke his leg and had to go through surgery. So if you'll bear with me, he sent some notes and stuff. Well, I'll be going back and forth to those notes to make sure that I cover everything that he wanted to cover during this meeting. Mine's not. it's working up there. So I'll just kind of follow along. Okay. As everybody knows, wild pigs are in every parish in our state. They're everywhere. The estimated population right now is 900,000 animals. And this estimate was from a Dr. Jack Mayer from Savannah River National Lab out of South Carolina. And he's developed a model, population model that looks at all the hunter surveys, all the wildlife management areas that we have taken feral swine from and plugs into this model. And he uses this to come up with the population number. And his numbers are used across the United States. That 900,000 number is very important to us because it actually puts Louisiana in the top category, category 5, which puts us up there to receive the maximum amount for any type of funding that's coming down through the USDA. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. That is also split between Wildlife Services and NRCS in our state. So just some information on them. They can be killed year round on private property during the daylight hours, and more recently at night without permit by holders of basic hunting license. They can also be snared by holders of a Louisiana trapping license. And there are some WMA areas that we have a few special seasons on, but generally they can be hunted during any time there's a hunting season on that WMA. Transportation of live wild pigs are not allowed if they're taken from a wildlife management area. However, Louisiana Department of Ag and Forestry has permits that allow them to go to these holding pens where people, I guess, trap them on private property, bring them to these licensed, permitted holding pens, feed them out, and then bring them to either a quarantine feedlot from there or state or federally inspected slaughterhouses. Department of Ag says there's approximately 75 of these holding pens in Louisiana right now. Dr. LaCour is well represented on this feral swine in Louisiana. Was on the advisory body, which is the Louisiana Feral Hog Management Advisory Task Force. And he told me that it had a sunset date of January of 2020. So there's no meeting scheduled for this year. He was a non-voting member. Other members on that committee were like LSU, Farm Bureau, Wildlife Research, professional biologists, landowners, forestry, quality deer management. So right now there's no meeting scheduled for this year. However, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, or AFWA, has for the first time ever instituted a feral swine working group, which Dr. LaCour is the vice chair on that working group. So it's important that AFWA is taking this feral swine working group because it takes it from a southeastern problem to where now it's a national. So it's getting national recognition, okay? Also, there's a National Wild Pig Task Force, and it's going to act as just an informational clearinghouse and will host an International Wild Pig Conference where Dr. LaCour is the outgoing chair and presently on a subcommittee for nominations and elections on that. So new laws pertinent to wild pigs right now. The Act 175 allows that year-round hunting, night hunting, wild pigs on private lands without a permit. The Act 125 removes liability from people who donate wild pork to food banks. That's very important. And LSU's Ag Center, back in 2015, they estimated the economic damage is 75 million, and that's losses by farmers. So I'm sure that number has grown quite a bit since then, and it doesn't take into effect just other properties beside agriculture properties. So looking at the numbers that Dr. Mayer used for the population estimates, this is hunter killed wild pigs, and if you can see, it's slowly on the increase, had a big bump there in 2014 to 15, but it's pretty much on an increase there for our state. And if you look at the wild pig harvest for our WMAs, you're seeing it staying pretty close to the same since 2018. Our LDWF staff, they're running in the area of around 2,000, a little over 2,000 a year on that. And then the totals are up there above 5,000 for each of those years. So we're maintaining that number for at least the past couple years. Now, this slide's important because of its Wildlife Services, who's under USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. And if you see those numbers, they have been going up year after year with a huge increase last year, over a threefold increase last year, or nearly threefold. And that's because of the 2018 Farm Bill, where there was $75 million that were split 50-50 between NRCS and Wildlife Services. And that was 20 pilot areas across the United States. And Louisiana was lucky enough to get 3 of those pilot areas. So that money allowed Wildlife Services to increase in personnel and equipment necessary to increase their efforts in killing feral swine. So you have 3 areas. You have a couple parishes in Southwest Louisiana. You have several parishes in Central Louisiana, and then also along the Mississippi River in Northeast Louisiana. So it's probably not a day goes by that as veterinarians, we're not asked, when are y'all coming up with a poison to kill these pigs? So right now, just give you kind of an update on kaput, which is feral hog bait. It's warfarin. And warfarin is a drug that causes disruption in the clotting ability. And so it's used in human medicine too. You can use it to prevent blood clots forming in the heart, in the lungs, and also peripheral, like in your legs or arms, that kind of stuff. But it's really it takes a lot for a pig to eat a lot of warfarin, and it takes a long time for that drug to work because the pig actually bleeds to death inside. So it's been determined to be inhumane by the Australian government, so it's illegal there. We're worried about bears utilizing the system that they have of being able to get to the toxin. And also warfarin is excreted in feces. So you're putting that out in the landscape. So we're worried about secondary, non-targeted species being exposed to that poison. Also, it can cause birth defects in people. So the LSU Ag Center actually in August of last year had submitted a patent application for sodium nitrite, a bait for feral swine. They develop a bait. Sodium nitrite does kill fairly quickly, by causing like it's a chemical methemoglobin that won't allow your blood to transport oxygen to the tissues. So in about 15 minutes to maybe 60 minutes, an hour, once they get a toxic dose, the animal's dead. So fairly quickly it works. You know, there's some palatability problems right now with this bait. There's a photo of their delivery system for it. I think it's a 12-gallon system, and it works off a cellular data. You have a camera that will show you when pigs are in the area, and then you can, with your cell phone, you can send a signal to it, and then it'll disperse a certain amount of bait with the toxin in it. So if there's bears present, then you don't push the button. But the downside is you have to monitor this 24 hours a day to tell when the animals are there. So there's a picture of one of the bait balls. And again, they are having some palatability issues with it, getting the pigs to eat it. There's another sodium nitrite hog bait called Hog Gone 2 that the USDA National Wildlife Research Center has been doing some investigation on it. And they found that it's actually 70 to 90% effective during the first night on the toxin, but small crumbs are killing birds. So they have some new trials slated for actually this year, I believe the summer this year in Alabama and Texas, to test some bird deterrents and some other bait formulas that maybe won't leave crumbs behind. And that's just a photo of the feeder. And once you look at that feeder, one thing that pops into our minds is, well, you know, just keep a bear from getting to the toxin, or other animals too may be able to get to that toxin. So still have some work to do. That's a photo of the bird deterrent system. It looks like it's just a fan with like those balloon type motion things to kind of keep birds away. So more research has to be done on that. So one of the latest feeders that's on the market is a wild pig feeder. And I don't know if you can see that very well, but it has some bars on the floor of it that are welded hard and fast where they don't move. And the floor underneath it actually is designed to where a pig will come and their hooves will fit in between those bars. And it takes 70 pounds of pressure on the floor to activate this. So once the floor goes down, it opens the door, it drops the bait and the toxin down to where the pig can gain access to it. We're still concerned with bears on this, even though they've had some videos on their website that shows looks like adult male bears that are trying to get into it, and they turn it over and all kinds of stuff. I think eventually if you would give a bear time, they would get into it. And the other issue that we're having is mud gets packed on that floor. And then once it goes down, mud gets in between those bear bars and it keeps that floor pegged down. Then anything can get into the bait and subsequently the poison. The baits being used on it, there's a couple baits. One of them is a sodium nitrite bait. The other one is called Hog Stop, and it's gossypol, which is a natural ingredient of pigment in cottonseed. Induces male infertility, even though it's temporary. You know, they have to be eating it. They have to be eating it for a while, and once they stop eating it, then the fertility comes back in it. It can be lethal to pigs and other animals at high concentrations, especially monogastric animals, any other monogastric animals. but it still can be lethal to and cause fertility issues in white-tailed deer and in bears and all that. It takes weeks to months of ingesting that gossypol to actually cause the toxicity. And at high doses, it can cause heart problems, liver problems, and kidney problems. So ruminants are susceptible, deer, cattle, sheep. Soon to be in stores according to the wild pig feeder. However, our research, we haven't found where it's been approved by anybody. So new traps. We get asked this a lot. If there's any new traps out there, a lot of pigs, as you know, wild pigs are pretty smart. They get trap shy pretty easy. So this is a new trap. It's basically called a pig brig. It's lightweight, portable. It's a Kevlar netting system. So you can pack it up. One person can pick it up, put it on like a four-wheeler ATV, bring it to a remote location. There is a website for it. You can go to it and they have videos, but basically you pick an area where you're going to put it. You pre-bait it. You get the pigs coming to the area. Then you set the trap up, but you take the net and you roll the net all the way up to where the pigs can go under it, get to the bait. Once you have them visiting the bait, you lower the net. If you notice in the center, it's a smaller diameter in the center. So the idea is the pigs go root under the net. Once they get into it, when they go to try to leave, they actually step on the net and so they can't get out. So different concept, just a different mouse trap, basically. So other research. LSU Ag Center is looking at corn preference for feral swine, and their findings show that pigs may prefer Roundup Ready corn compared with conventional hybrids. And if you're familiar with the BT corn, if the corn has been sprayed with BT or has that gene inserted in it, they really prefer that over even the Roundup corn. So they like the BT corn and the Roundup corn than conventional corn. And that just shows some plots of corn with the destruction of the corn. The corn that's left on the photo on the left is just conventional corn where they ate all the Roundup Ready and BT corn. Other research that's out there is from Wildlife Services. They performed some studies on showing the reduction in scavengers, and basically it was a reduction of vultures on pig carcasses if you cover them with lime. And that's important because dealing with wild pig eliminations in the event of a transboundary swine disease such as African swine fever. So if you have a highly contagious virus like African swine fever, which causes death within a week, and you have a lot of carcasses on the landscape, and you can cover them with this lime and keep the vultures and scavengers from spreading the disease. So future research right now, LSU Ag Center and LSU School of Veterinary Medicine working with us, just revisiting the naturally spread immunocontraception in wild pigs. And basically what that is you're trying to come up with an antibody that actually attacks the reproductive organs in either the female or the male or both, and thereby, you're preventing pregnancy. Look at this back in 2014, and the feds said, no, we don't want to go in that direction. But right now, it's being looked at again. And the main issue here is you don't want to release something into the wild that's going to get into the domestic swine, commercial swine. So you need to look at diseases or bacteria, viruses that have, or external parasites that we have vaccines for, you know, to where they can use. And it needs to be a vaccine that works fairly well in the commercial swine before you release something out in the wild. So that's about all he had. Just want to reiterate, there's no silver bullet in this that we have right now that's just going to take out the whole entire population. We believe it's going to be you're going to have to use every tool in the tool chest to fight this battle. As you can see, takes funding to really get those numbers up on the wildlife services numbers. They went threefold just in 1 year with some additional funding. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner McPherson.
Dr. Berry, just going through your slide presentation, do we have any idea how many permits the Ag Department has issued for transportation of live hogs?
They did not give me a number on that. They just said they had 75 of the actual premises that they could be brought to. You know, so I think.
So there's 75 permitted holding pens?
Right. So whoever holds that holding pen can transport them to that holding pen.
Kind of got mixed feelings about that, but that would be part of the answers if it became commercially feasible for people to trap hogs to be able to market.
Well, that's one of the things that they started out. I think there were some restaurants in New Orleans that were looking at putting wild pigs on their menu. Problem with that is, you know, you can feed out a wild pig and you still get a pork chop about that big, you know. So you get a lot of fat on the outside, but not much protein in it, you know. But any reason,
Big sausage hogs, huh?
yeah, any reason to kill a pig, I'm for. You know, I mean, that's yeah. There's, like I said, it's going to take a little bit of everything. The issue that we have with that is, you know, a lot of these pigs, the reason why they're in 64 parishes is because of illegal transportation and they were being released. And so, you know, not saying these people would do that, but an accident may happen and these pigs escape, you know. So in my mind, if you have your hands on them, the best thing to do is to, you know, euthanize them.
Did you say that, did I understand you say that the advisory task force had sunsetted?
That's what he told me in January of last year.
Yeah.
Wonder how the legislature determined that should happen and didn't.
I don't have an answer for that. I could ask Jim.
It was predetermined, Joe. It was predetermined in the legislation.
Yeah, I know, but I wonder if they thought it didn't have enough efficacy or wasn't contributing to anything.
I don't think they just said it's going to go for this long, period. And I guess it could always come back in another session, but it ran its course.
Yeah, a lot of laws are in groups like this are implemented with a sunset date, but typically you look at them again. We have a sunset date, but typically you decide that the commission has some value and the department has some value, so you
Right. They didn't do that.
reauthorize it. I'm just curious. The question was, why didn't they? Why didn't they think that it was worthwhile to have those folks meeting upstairs and continuing to look at this? Could y'all get us that answer, Dr. Berry? If Jim was a member of it?
I can sure ask him about it. Mhm.
Let me see what my next one is. This pig brig Kevlar trap is interesting because it doesn't require a trap gate, which is one of the
Right.
problems. And everything that I've been able to look at and study is, they talk about you need to catch the sounder, the whole bunch of pigs.
Right.
Do you have any idea, does this accomplish that? Or because even with the gates where they leave it open, until all of the group comes in it, and then they trigger it when they're all in it, looking at their camera. My thought is that this net trap that you're gonna catch a few, but you're not gonna catch a whole group. Is that
Actually, if you look at the video, if you can, on Pig Brig, the video actually shows capturing quite a few pigs. Just about every one went into the trap.
so if I go to this
because
Pig
there's-
Brig, it'll show me a video?
on YouTube. Yeah. Yes, sir. And what happens is there's no noise. Anytime you trigger a gate, it's going to make a noise and it's going to scare everything else away. They may come back to the trap later on and usually do, but they can't go in because the gate's closed. In this instance, the pigs go in and eat.
You're talking about a manual trigger trap. I'm talking about the floor busters and stuff, where you see that all your pigs are in it before you trigger it.
Right. But
remotely
there is
from
a,
your cell phone.
right. But there is a delay there. When you push a button, it's a delay before that gate actually, it may be only a couple seconds, but you can still miss them, and then you only have a view of what that camera is showing you. You don't know if another hog is outside of that view, to where this trap, and I'm not saying it's a better trap, I'm just saying it's another way of catching them. This trap, they can enter it from all different sides. And once they get in and they start eating, I imagine they'll stay in it until the food's gone or something goes to scare them to try to get out. And that's when they'll realize that they can't get out. So to answer your question, does it catch the whole sounder? I imagine it could catch the whole sounder because there's no noise when the gates drop to scare them. So the only thing that would prevent them from the whole sounder going in would be an aggressive hog, maybe on the inside. But they can root all the way 360 degrees all the way around this. So there's not one location that they have to come into this trap at.
The hog stock, it says here, soon to be in stores. Is it approved method that's effective?
We can't find any approval whatsoever on
What's this bullet point here, soon to be in stores according to WPL?
That's according to them, that's what they say. But when it's been researched, we cannot find any approval for any of that.
You can't find where the FDA or whoever the
No.
agency is.
It definitely hasn't come across us. And no, sir.
So I can't order any of that this evening.
Actually, if you go online and you look up kaput, you look at the label on kaput, it says it's only available in Louisiana, which it's not available in Louisiana. So just because it's on there and just because they say you can get it, as you well know, doesn't say that it's legal to use. But we are working with all of these, trying to figure out better ways, to get safely a toxin out there. Because it's going to take everything. It's going to take biological control. It's going to take, trapping, everything on this. There's not going to be a silver bullet.
And the hog on too is that's not the LSU bait. Huh?
No, sir, that's a total different bait. And that's being looked at by the feds, National Wildlife Health Center. And they're looking at it, and there is a issue with the crumbs being left over and birds being poisoned and dying from that. And then if you look at their system, their feeder, bears are going to be able to get into that fairly easy. And once a bear gets in it, may tear the door off of it. Then raccoons get into it, maybe deer, whoever, who knows what'll get into it.
Does that feeder, that hog on feeder, I see on the top of the next page where you have it it looks like the trap's closed. Do they just open the feed at certain times?
I think, no, I think that's made for a hog to come up and root under it to lift it up.
Or those hogs are actually holding it up?
Holding
Bottom
it
of the
up,
first
right.
photo.
And so I think what they're saying is the weight of it keeps other smaller animals out of it. But as you well know, a bear, could probably pick that whole thing up.
Well, I misread this and I wish you had the pages, but it talks about the LSU Ag Center toxin delivery.
Mhm.
And you said that was 12 gallon. Well, gallon is GAL period.
Yeah.
This says 12 gauge. And then I looked at the ball down there, which looks like larger than 12 gauge. But that's the delivery system, is you shoot it into the hog and kill it.
Yeah.
But a 30-06 does that most of the time, so
Yes, sir. That's pretty effective too. Yeah.
that's it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Corbell.
Dr. Berry, what's the theory on why these hogs are preferring these different corn varieties? Do they like the coating more so than just plain boring corn, or what's the theory behind why they're selecting one corn variety over the other?
I imagine, they do, number one, they find stuff through smell more than anything. And so, and then it is also probably the taste of it. It has got to change the taste of it. to
The
where they-
coated variety, but
Right.
there's also a hybrid variety, the
That-
hybrid seed, once it gets in the ground, grows a plant, grows a corn. Are they suggesting that the taste
Yes, because
carries and makes
that BT is still in that.
it's still in
It's
the
still in it.
kernel?
Right. It's still in the
Throughout that
plant,
whole
too.
process.
Right. Mhm.
Good night. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you, Dr. Berry.
Thank you. Mhm.
Agenda item number 10, receive and consider notice of intent of Deer Management Assistance Program hosting rule change. Jonathan
I
Bordelon.
don't know what you want to do here, but I had problems on getting it to. Yes, sir.
Happy New Year, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Jonathan Barnwell, Deer Program Manager, Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries. Here today to talk a little bit about the Deer Management Assistance Program. It's a cooperative program between the department and more than 700 cooperators around the state. So what we're talking about today is going to impact potentially up to 700 separate properties that total right at 1.5 million acres. And with DMAP, with managing deer, there's certain allowances for hunters on these properties that participate in the program that aren't available to all hunters in Louisiana. So membership does come with its benefits, but some of those benefits are to the department in the form of pretty valuable data that we collect. But in addition to allowances, there are certain requirements. One requirement in regulation pertains to boundaries. For years now, there's been a posting requirement for DMAP boundaries, and it's specified that a sign, and it was a sign from this previous slide, must be placed at 1,000-foot intervals around the property. And in addition to that, they also had to be placed at each point or each entry point. And what we're looking to do is actually relax this some. So we're going to go to a less stringent posting requirement. At least that's what's being proposed. So rather than saying boundaries, we're going to change that from boundaries to entrances and public road frontage of lands enrolled in DMAP. The next slide will show you why, because also in regulation at this time, we currently say that signs must be placed at 1,000-foot intervals around the boundary, but instead of that, we'll modify it in the second paragraph to include along public roads and at every entry point onto the property. At every entry point onto the property, that's not something that's proposed. That's something that was already in the regulation. So the only thing we're really looking to do at this point is to make that change where it's no longer required around the entire boundary. And this slide here, this is just to give you an example. This is a property in Vernon Parish. Obviously, it was hit by two major hurricanes this year. This is a public road along that property. So on a property such as this, if it's along, in this case, it is a public road, you would have to have that DMAP sign every 1,000 feet. And if there's a gate or a driveway onto this property that you could enter, then you would need a sign there. However, imagine the rest of this. If this is a 2,000 acre property and you have several miles of perimeter around it that aren't along a road, rather than having to traverse this particular property and place signs every 1,000 feet just to be in compliance with current regulation, that would no longer be a requirement. So the proposal we're doing today is basically going to relax that boundary posting requirement, but it's still going to require it along roads. It's still going to require it at entrances. And how will it affect the department and staff? I visited with staff on it. I visited with our enforcement section about it also. And in general, when you enroll in DMAP, if you're one of the 700 DMAP cooperators, when you enroll, in addition to an application, while you don't have to provide it each year, during your initial enrollment in the program, you provide a map to us. And most of those maps now are digitized. So our staff has maps of the properties that are enrolled. They have coordinates for at least at a minimum, the entrance, if not the entire perimeter of the property, depending, we're trying to catch those up. But so from a work aspect, we show up to a property, we're doing a site visit, we're there to collect biological samples, we're there to meet with the landowner, provide technical assistance, maybe just to deliver tags or to pick up jawbones, whatever it is. We're not really relying on that perimeter boundary to deliver any of those functions that we deliver. Because when we arrive on a property, as you would imagine, we enter the property probably the same as the folks that hunt on it, and rely on the network of access within that property to traverse it and provide whatever services we're there to provide. So for us, the posting requirement was something that just dates back to the history of the program, which DMAP began in 1981. So we're just revisiting this, looking to kind of soften the boundary posting requirement, but still maintain that posting along public roads and entry points. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those at this time.
Commissioner McPherson.
Mr. Chairman and members, I'm pleased to see this because I think we're all aware that DMAP clubs, and the Colonel can correct me if I'm stating this wrong, are the only times that enforcement presses charges for trespass. And we know too often that DAs have been reluctant to prosecute. There was a major change in the law where basically the DMAP posting requirements followed the state land posting requirements. Well, that's all gone at this point. You don't have to post your land. An individual has to know where they are, and they have to be permission to be on land through ownership or lease or just written permission. I asked that an amendment, and I hope that Ms. Boggs has that we would clarify this even more, where it says every entry point. Many times natural boundaries constitute the limits of a club, and an entry point could be a buy coming in or something else. And I just don't want there to be any confusion or misunderstanding. So basically I'm saying, I would like to offer an amendment, and he'll read it, but it basically says, I think points of ingress or egress, which would be by where a motorized vehicle of any type, a four-wheeler, a thing would be able to enter the property.
Mr. Boggs.
I've got a question, if you don't mind, before Commissioner McPherson, why wouldn't you want to I mean, wouldn't that be the same thing if it's a public, let's call it the intercoastal? Why would the intercoastal be different than a public road?
Well, because let's use your example of the intercoastal, and I've got some DMAP property that the intercoastal is my boundary. Well, then basically, you pull the boat up to the bank, that's a point of ingress into the property. So that would be confusing. What is your signage requirements there?
I would think it'd be 1,000-foot interval if that's the same thing on.
You think, and that's what I want to get away from. And I also don't want to require the 1,000-foot if it's a non-public or if it's even a public waterway. Now, keep in mind that nothing here, you can put a sign every 50 feet if you want to, if you think that helps exclude people. Actually, I've always questioned my mind if I put up QDMA signs, if I put up DMAP signs, am I saying that this is great deer hunting, come on in? Just a thought process that I've gone through personally. What I do recognize, and I won't put Mr. Borlaug on the spot, but I doubt if there's a half dozen legally posted DMAP clubs in the state today. We're not enforcing it. We're not even looking at it. And I want it to be that if a case is made of trespass, that it doesn't get thrown out like the DAs used to throw out the cases on just trespassing on somebody's private land. Well, you saw those trees down from the hurricane. Well, one of them was within 1,000 foot of another one, or over the 1,000 foot. You didn't have your land legally posted. I want it to be the same. And again, you can put up as many DMAP signs if you like orange, where you can put up one every 10 feet, one every 50 feet, one every 500, one every 1,000 along the canal, along the back coming into the property, along the public road. Well, the public road would be required, and it points of vehicular access.
Along those lines, why would you keep public road frontage then? And
I
not
actually
just
had
limit
that
it to
discussion with Cole, and he says that the statute requires it to be reasonably posted. And there's no hardship and no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that along a road front, was Cole's response.
That wouldn't apply to the intracoastal? That same legal theory?
He didn't think so.
I think all entrances make sense. I mean, being a guy that manages private land in the marsh area, our roads are now.
And there's nothing to stop you from putting a DMAP sign there if you think it benefits you.
But we
But
need to
don't
have
require
uniform, we need to have uniform regulations statewide, I guess is where I'm at. So if it's not worth doing in the marsh, then to me, it's not worth doing in the uplands, along public road frontages. But
Well, believe it or not, in the uplands, we have water bodies also.
Well, I mean, it would apply to you guys too. That's what if it's a legal concern and a legal theory, then perhaps the attorneys need to decide, is one any different, truly different in the court of law than the other? And I don't know that answer.
Sure. Yeah. So Commissioner McPherson is referring to revised statute 56-110, and currently it says you shall place DMAP signs at reasonable distances along the boundaries of the lands and at roads and other entrances for the information of the public. So it does not mention waterways. I believe Commissioner McPherson's intent here is to put the minimum amount of burden on the landowner. And as he says, if the landowner chooses to do it at every waterway or construct an entire wall of DMAP signs, that's up to them. But just to minimize the burden on the landowner and participants in DMAP, I believe was his intent. And that's the reason for not including waterways.
But if there's a legal justification for including roads, then either it would apply to waterway roads, or we need to change the law to eliminate the burden to post it along roads for consistency purposes. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think if you test this in court, they're going to see it the same. I mean, at one point, there were no roads in this state. And most waterways were viewed as the means of navigation. So I like what you're trying to do is reduce, some technicality that somebody's going to try and get out of from walking on the private property and poaching. But I would just like us to look into, do we need to pursue getting public roads out of there too? And if you want to post everything you got, giddy up. But I would be concerned by continuing to leave public roads in. Have we now clouded the water in the courtroom? And I don't know that answer.
Yeah, our legal opinion is currently we need to leave public roads in, waterways are optional, but we could certainly look at working with the legislature to.
And that's a law, so we could court a legislator to eliminate public roads from the burden on this program, right?
Absolutely.
I'd be in favor of that at some point, but.
Okay.
I like what you're trying to do. I just would want that clarity.
Sure.
My deal is very simply that currently we're probably no one's complying with our regulations. The legislature saw fit to do away with all posted requirements for purposes of trespass on other lands, water, roads, no matter where you come in, if you own somebody else's property. So I'm trying to get this to comply to where a landowner can be in compliance to be able to enforce trespass and not give that out to the DA to not enforce trespass on that property because you didn't have it on your DMAP signs correctly. It doesn't stop you from doing whatever you want as far as posting. It just sets a minimum set of requirements.
I'm with you, but as I appreciate it, I would advocate at some point, maybe not today, to eliminate public road frontage as well.
I actually tried to do that, but council said that we ought to leave it in for now.
Okay.
Yes.
Any objection to the amendment?
Well, and I'm sorry if you want to debate
Well, we hadn't
more,
heard
go
the
ahead.
amendment
But yes, so the original amendment as proposed by the department you have on your handout, it just deleted, you posted 1,000-foot intervals and deleted around the entire boundary of the property and replaced that with along any public road frontage and left every entry point onto the property as well. So I believe Commissioner McPherson would like to change that to say the complete reg would now say signs will be placed at 1,000-foot intervals along any public road frontage and at all points of ingress and egress used by motor vehicles to access the property. Is that correct, Commissioner McPherson?
Correct.
Okay.
Wouldn't a boat be considered a motor vessel?
I guess it could be. We could say, motorized vehicles on roads.
I mean, yeah, whatever, but a boat's a motorized vessel. I'm not a lawyer again, but I would think a lawyer would interpret it that way.
I don't know the legal definition. I thought a vehicle had a different definition than a boat.
I would, it does say vehicle, and I would agree with that, Commissioner McPherson. We could certainly clarify in any way y'all choose, though.
That's fine.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Just a question, I mean, are you opposed to putting vessel on that amendment as
Yes.
well? You're opposed to putting vessel on it? They just leave it as vehicle?
Correct.
Okay.
My appreciation is he doesn't want to have to put
Every
signs.
1,000 feet.
No, he doesn't want to let's assume you're in the marsh and you've got a bayou, whatever, and it's on the 1812 map. It's clearly publicly accessible. He doesn't want to make you post, let's say you come in off of that bayou onto your property. He doesn't want signs there, right?
Require signs. Yeah.
Doesn't want to require signs.
Because it might say this is a good area to go hunting or whatever.
No, not because that, just trying to be sure that we're legal. If that buy goes in there, up in our area, those signs are gonna go underwater. They're gonna flood every year unless you put them 20 foot up in a tree, which wouldn't make sense. And they're gonna get torn down and all, and the buys, you gotta get out there and determine where's the high water mark? Are you on your property or you on the public water bottom? The bow's a mile and a half long, so you gotta go down this side of it and come back the other side of it.
And the maintenance too. I mean, those signs get vandalized.
So, Mr. Chairman, did Commissioner McPherson offer the amendment through a motion? Did
Yes,
you?
yes, sir.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
We have to put it on the.
Yeah, on the whole.
Yeah.
NOI.
Commissioner McPherson, you want to make a motion for your whole NOI? Because then
Yeah, I would move the adoption of the NOI
Excellent.
With the,
as amended.
As amended, second. Commissioner Blanchard, all in favor? Tommy Tuma, agenda item number 11.
I hope I'm the person you've been waiting on. Probably not because of my good looks or content, but Deputy Secretary Shadwin gave me my inspiration this morning. So I'm ready to go. Hope y'all are. Happy New Year to everybody. It's good to be up here. I enjoy this magic carpet ride that we go on for 5 months together. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge Miss Susan Falcon. She is the integral part of this process. Also, I'm not sure you're aware, but enforcement, Office of Management and Finance, legal, fisheries, everybody has a hand in putting this together and contributing in ways that I won't get into today, but it's really a department partnership, and we all contribute. So it's a very comprehensive thing, and we'll get started with that. Today, I'm here to present to you the hunting season and WMA rules and regulations for 2021-22 and 2022-23. Here are the chapters in Title 76 that we're going to go over today. We'll start with the General and Wildlife Management Area Hunting Rules and Regulations. We're proposing a language adjustment, and keep in mind that this is only proposed changes to Title 76. In your packet, you see that there's a lot of generic language for resident game and deer seasons. I will have, I think we're going to post that the actual dates on the internet on the department's website after this presentation, if you choose to approve it as proposed. But we'll have those dates so the public can actually see what we're proposing instead of them having to go to the calendar and look it up. So first one, we're proposing a language adjustment related to legal gear for raccoon and opossum. Basically, it just makes it legal to hunt raccoon and opossum. Same thing, it's illegal to hunt all resident game in Louisiana. So a very small change. And all the changes are highlighted and underlined in your packet. All the deletions are struck through and highlighted just to keep up. 111D9, removal of nighttime permit for take of nuisance animals and quadrupeds during hunting season, and change to local parish sheriff as contact. This was actually a bill that was enrolled. It was House Bill 159 by Representative McFarland. It's already in 76, so we're just bringing, it's already in 56. We're bringing 76 along to mirror that law. And so here's the second part of that, where it shows that you used to have to, during hunting season, you used to have to get a permit from LDWF enforcement. We're removing that permit requirement, and we're also, you used to have to contact enforcement and the sheriff. Now you just have to contact the local parish sheriff. Change in sex identification requirements on deer, on validated deer. So we're proposing this. You've seen very numerous presentations over the years from Jonathan and Dr. LaCour about CWD. Any amount of material that we can lessen moving lessens our chance of moving a potentially positive CWD material to another area of the state. So what we have is the language. You used to have to keep the sex organs with the deer. Now, if you have appropriately tagged and validated that deer and the tag remains with the carcass, you no longer have to keep the sex organs or proof of sex identification, which would be antlers or whatever. Yes, sir.
Mr. Tuma, thanks. So help me with this one. So under this scenario, I go up to Tensaw and shoot a deer,
Yes, sir.
and I'm at a camp. I clean it. Obviously I tagged it when I walked up to it. Before I come home on Sunday, if I validate the tag, let's assume I killed it on Sunday morning. So we're
Okay.
not dealing with the 72-hour issue. I can dispose of the sex organs and head at the camp before I put it in my truck and drive back to Lafayette.
Correct.
If I don't validate it, then I got to bring the head with me.
You have to have the positive sex identification. That's correct.
Period. Okay.
Period.
So if you validate, you sort of lose that sex organ transportation issue.
That's exactly what we're proposing. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I've always been curious about this. At that point, let's say I went with a buddy and he's got 100 kids and he needs something to eat, and I decide to split it up. What is appropriate at that point?
So
I
111.
validated it
yeah.
already, though.
So 111D11, which is the very rule before this, it goes over the tagging requirements. You have to have a possession tag. So you give them a possession,
give them a possession tag.
It has your name, your address, your
Please.
license number, and they're
Good
good
to
to go.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one, changing hunter validation at WMA managed hunts. If you've taken the opportunity to participate in a WMA managed hunt, we in the past have historically validated those deer for you, so you did not have to call the 1-800 number or go online. There has been some confusion in the past. Some hunters still you could go, you were not blocked from validating the deer. So if you were unclear about that, there was a possibility that we could double count your deer. So we're going to remove the fact that LDWF staff validate that deer, and we're going to put the onus on all hunters. It's going to be consistent throughout the state. All hunters have to validate their deer if you harvest a deer on a managed hunt. So G1Q, clarification on what can be used within WMA LAAs. It actually defines a trolling motor. So there's some instances where people are using golf cart motors and turning them into surface drives, which is contradictory to limited access areas. So we've actually defined what a trolling motor is, and it's basically the language operation. It says that a trolling motor is defined as a self-contained unit that includes a completely submerged electric motor at the end of a shaft, propeller and controls, and it's fixed to a vessel either at the bow or stern. So I know it's shocking, but we're trying to cover all our bases. So removal of a PCHP waterfowl blind on Russell Sage WMA. We have not had any use or request in 3 years. Staff continue to have to purchase supplies. They have to put decoys out. They have to brush the blind, and we haven't had any request or use in 3 years. So we're going to do away with that. And the Sandy Hollow, there's not a wheelchair confined deer or waterfowl hunting blind on Sandy Hollow. So we're just removing that. That was actually a mistake to have that in there. Next regulation, we're proposing to allow using tracks on ATVs that meet current dimension requirements. We've had a lot of people have requests to be able to use tracks. They're low impact. We're not allowing them anywhere to be able to operate them anywhere that you can already operate an ATV. It's just within the current dimensions that we already have. And those are weight of 750 pounds, length of 85 inches, and width of 48 inches.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tuma, you just alluded to the trolling motor way that our hunters are quite resourceful in coming up with ingenious ways of trying to get around these regulations.
Yes, sir.
Do you see that same thing? I mean, I'm fairly familiar. I hunt public land occasionally. I used to hunt it a lot. And these four-wheeler trails and the tasks that your managers have to go through to try and keep these things maintained with the type of vehicles these guys are bringing out there, I don't envy it. I mean, it's insane. Do you guys see a way? I understand, I get the idea of putting the tracks. I think it probably is going to reduce some of this ridiculousness that's going on out there. Have you guys really looked into a way that somebody can get around this now by having bigger four-wheeler tires and any of that? Do you see any gap in there where these guys can squeeze through? Because if there's one, they're going to get through it.
Yeah, we looked at it comprehensively. I know David Hayden, Lance Cable, and Steve Smith and myself, we looked at it a lot. And we studied other regulations, and we looked at what's available on the internet. And we feel like we have all the bases covered by putting you see that I struck out factory specifications. So you could have factory specifications, put tracks over the Argo wheels, and they could be whatever that you wanted because it still fit within the factory specifications of the tire and the dimensions. So that's why we struck out factory. So you're confined by those dimensions. It doesn't matter if it's a factory or not. You're confined by those dimensions, and that's where we struck out factory for that specific reason that you're referring to.
And what I'll say, and it might not be popular, and that's fine. As a guy that buys a regular price four-wheel drive four-wheeler with regular size tires, I'd be happy to pay a little bit more on my WMA permit to have a little bit more money to this agency to maintain those four-wheeler trails, because I know it's not easy, particularly with what these guys are bringing out there. It's incredible.
Generally, we can stay on top of that, but the last 5 years have been some of the wettest in history, and so our windows are so short to work. We haven't been able to get onto it. And sometimes September and October, we're already allowing ATV traffic back on them. So it's been a challenge.
And I guess what I'd say is I'm not unique. I think the public at large that utilizes the public hunting opportunities, I think a $10 or $10.50 WMA fee is a absolute steal. Particularly, I mean, even if you wanted, when I hunted Tensaw, they made us pay a separate four-wheeler permit, which I was happy to pay. And I'll say this though, because I like to pick on the feds. They don't do a very good job of maintaining their trails either. But it's something maybe that we could consider in the future as a separate four-wheeler permit with the decal, because nobody objected to paying it. I mean, but to have a straight kitty just to maintain those things, because it's just going to get more challenging as technology advances. And these guys, I mean, it's incredible what they're able to spend their money on.
Right.
My money doesn't stack up like that.
Right. And I'll respectfully disagree with you. I think you are unique. All right. Next proposal, same thing, allow tracks on UTVs. And you can see that we made the same changes that we made with ATVs. You will still not be able to retrieve game with the UTV. So that regulation has not changed. It's just allowing tracks for UTVs. Chaffalot Delta, we're eliminating the youth lottery hunt and making it a general youth open season. So where you used to be, it was a lottery hunt where you had to put in and pay $5 and you could get drawn. Now we're removing that from the lottery and we're just making it an open hunt where anybody can go hunt it as long as you meet the youth requirements. Elimination of mandatory check of hogs and deer on Chaffalot Delta. You used to have to check them in at the Big Island check station for some reason. You already have to do that. It's a requirement that you check it in through the self-clearing permit. So we're removing that requirement for the public, and you still do it on the SCP. This is a change in allowable weapon for youth on the Chaffalot Delta. If you've been to Chaffalot Delta, you know there's not a lot of high ground there, just several hundred acres. So because we could control access on this lottery hunt, you could use high-powered center-fired rifles. Now that it's going to be open for safety reasons, we're kind of necking that down. We're going to allow shotgun with buckshot and archery. So that's the reason why we're making that weapon change.
And you're not going to allow slugs?
This is what Lance Campbell and his staff recommended, because the way so if you've been on the Big Island, it's basically like a herringbone when it comes back up. So there is an opportunity to maybe place somebody in a little bit more precarious position by allowing rifled slugs with scopes. Okay. Camp Beauregard WMA, removal permitted disabled veterans hunt. LDWF has always been part of this, and we've been part of the lottery process. The way these organizations work, they would like to handle the lottery and the screening themselves. So the hunt's not going away. We're just not going to have it in 76. They will apply for a special use permit with the secretary to hold this hunt. We're still in the regulations. Camp Beauregard WMA is closed the weekend of this hunt. We're still going to have that language in there to allow these people to have that hunt. So it's going to carry on. We moved over to an online lottery system, so it's very difficult for us to screen what the different, the disabled veterans, what the requirements are. So they're going to handle that themselves, and we're still going to be part of it. We're just not going to be handling the selection in the lottery. Elbow Slough, addition of a woodcock season. We're just going to, it was previously not allowed. We're going to allow it now. Grassy Lake, if you remember 3 years ago and then 2 years ago, we made the same changes for Richard K. Yancey and Spring Bayou respectively, to where we allow sport fishing after 10 during the early September teal season. Y'all are all sportsmen, you know, teal hunting's done by 8:30, so we're allowing, the current regulation reads that it's permitted after 2 p.m. We feel no reason to make those sport fishermen wait till after 2. They can start at 10. Marsh Bayou, proposal to eliminate hunting with dogs early in the season. Marsh Bayou is very small. It's less than 600 acres, if I remember. But there's some issues with dogs getting out on adjacent landowners' property while they're deer hunting. And so we're going to scale back that. In the early part of the season, you will still be able to use dogs for rabbits and beagles, for squirrels, first Saturday of January to the last day of February. So in the early part of the season, we're just proposing to do away with that for safety reasons and trespass or conflicts with adjacent landowners. Pomme de terre, same exact sport fishing deal we discussed earlier with Grassy Lake. Those WMAs are very close. Sabine WMA, same exact thing that we talked about with Camp Beauregard WMA. They also have a PCHP hunt. So we're going to eliminate that from 76, but you see it says the area is closed to all activities third Saturday of October for 2 days to all, but this is for youth hunters. So we have an organization that runs a youth hunt. I'm sorry that it's wrong up top. We have an organization that runs a youth hunt. They're still handle the screening process, and that organization, they take them and they feed them. So they're going to handle the lottery process. Salvador and Timken, waterfowl closure of 2 p.m. We're making consistent with those wildlife management areas that don't have a lot of tidal influence. So we're going to change the waterfowl, same as outside, except closes at 2 p.m. Soda Lake WMA, we're adding waterfowl hunting on a certain track. So that portion west of 12 Mile Bayou will be same as outside. It was closed for waterfowl hunting. So we're adding waterfowl hunting opportunity to that piece of Soda Lake. So moving on from the WMA regulations, we'll get into general and WMA turkey hunting regulations. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to propose to move St. Tammany and Washington parishes from Turkey Area B to Turkey Area A. So when Hurricane Katrina come through, there was a lot of habitat destruction. We thought that those habitats would have impacts to the turkey population. So on the conservative side, we pulled those 2 parishes since they were the most affected from Katrina, we pulled them from Turkey Area A and put them in B. Since then, the habitats improved in some areas. It has not improved in that area. The Florida parishes is very, development is the biggest thing. So some habitat has went away, some hasn't recovered because of invasive species, tallow tree, and things like that. But only for the majority of St. Tammany and Washington parishes, we feel like looking at the Poult survey and looking at harvest, it's on a trend line up. The Poult survey is on a steady line, and the harvest is on an upward trajectory slightly. So we feel like we can go ahead and reverse that management action that we did in 2006. Second part of that is closure of that portion of East Carroll Parish that is currently open. So the Batteur or Batcher, depending on how good your French is currently open in East Carroll Parish. There has not been a turkey harvested, I think, in maybe 5 years. And I think only 3 since 2012, if I'm remembering Cody's notes correctly. And that habitat, the Mississippi River's been extreme spring flooding. So that habitat's been compromised quite a bit. So all these properties we're talking about in this portion of East Carroll, they're all privately owned. Those guys they're actually approached us and they want to close this down. They haven't been hunting it. So we're just going, out of abundance of caution, we're going to propose to close that portion of East Carroll, monitor that habitat. If in the populations, if they improve, maybe in the future we can go ahead and have a turkey season again. So moving on to migratory bird seasons, regulations, and bag limits. No change for woodcock. December, it's always the last 45 days from January 31 backwards. So the woodcock dates are always the same every year. So right now. Mourning doves. So I have the dates on these because since we do the migratory bird seasons on an annual basis, and it's depending on the zones, I put the dates in there for you, and I'll kind of scroll through these. It does reflect the change that y'all made in the South Zone last year to have the dove season open through the Thanksgiving holidays, as there were some hunters that came to the Lafayette meeting and requested. So it does reflect that change. Till September 11th to September 26th, the bag limit is still the same. King and Clapper rails, they're opening during the early September teal season, always reflects that. And then November the 13th to January the 5th. Soar and Virginia is the same exact season dates. And Gallinules is the same exact season dates. Snipe, y'all changed the zone configuration for the migratory birds last year. I can't remember what month, but it's a west zone and an east zone, November 2nd to December 5th, December 18th, February 28th in the west zone, or it's the same season in both zones. Ducks, coots, and mergansers, I hope you can see it. The west zone differs from the east zone, where there are now 2 splits and 3 segments in the west zone. The youth and veterans is on the first weekend. The east zone, there's still 1 split and 2 segments. And the youth and veterans is at the front and at the end of the season. And those are the dates. If you need me to pause a little bit, I can, if you want to take those in. The limit is the same as it was last year. Light geese, snow blue, Ross, and white fronts, east zone, November 6th through December 5th, closed from the 6th through the 17th. It opens back up December 18th and runs to January 30th. West zone, it also has 3 segments and 2 splits. November 6th to December 5th, small break, December 18th to January 2nd, another small break, January 10th through February 6th. And there's no change in the proposed bag limit for those. Canada geese, east and west zone, no change in the bag limits, November 6th to December 5th in the east, and the 18th to 30th for the east zone, and then the west zone, you see those dates there. November 6th to December 5th, December 18th to January 2nd, January 10th to February 6th. That's the same as the light geese, I believe. Conservation order. East zone, basically the conservation order is open in between the splits and then a little segment after the season closes. December 6th to December 17th, and then January 31st to March the 6th. West zone, December 6th through December 17th, January 3rd through January 9th, and February 7th to March the 6th. Falconry seasons, there's a change. It's November 2nd to January 31st for woodcock, rail, gallinule, and ducks. And then for doves, it's September 15th to October the 1st. So I guess the Fish and Wildlife Service, Larry, defined veterans for us. So we're just defining veterans in Title 76, and I won't read it to you, but you see where it's at and what your requirements are to qualify as a veteran. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Mr. Boggs, do you have something that you'd like to say about the process we're going to go through here?
Yes, just to give the commission an update here on the process for this notice of intent, which is a administrative rule, requires the department to go through the state mandated administrative rule making process. This is the January meeting where the department presents their recommendations. At this meeting, y'all can make any changes, and this notice of intent will be submitted to the Office of State Register. Next month for February and for March, you may also propose any amendments to the notice of intent. Public comment will be taken formally and informally that y'all may consider, and any changes y'all have as well. And in the April meeting, no action will be taken on the NOI. Public comments will be evaluated. And then in the May meeting is y'all's final opportunity to amend the notice of intent before it is sent to the legislature and the governor to become a final rule. That will be done in June. And then in July, you will vote to ratify the final rule that you approved in May.
Excellent.
Any questions? Wow, I like it. Public comments will be accepted through 9 p.m. March 4th, 2021. I think that's the date of the commission meeting. All right, so whatever I receive after I give you that presentation this morning, I guess I'll shoot that to you that afternoon. or Miss Susan will. She doesn't allow me to email you directly. Another thing, those comments can be submitted to me by either letter. You can call me, you can email me, you can send a pigeon, whatever, or my email is right there on the screen. Also, we will be having a Zoom meeting in lieu of public meetings this year due to the COVID deal. Date and time to be, I guess, clarified, or we'll present that to you at the February commission meeting. It will be between February the 25th and probably March the 1st. So it's going to be sometime in that time frame. If we do have a request for more than one Zoom meeting from the public, if they can't make that one, then we will look into, what time. We've always held these meetings at night and then on a Saturday. So we may do it during the day. We may do it after work hours. I'm not sure, but be looking for that information. And then, like I said, all this will be posted on the department's website after that, after this meeting, should you vote to accept this notice of intent.
Thank you, Tommy. Now, if we have any amendments, we can work through those. Commissioner McPherson.
Mr. Bob, don't I have some amendments?
Yes, sir. All right, Commissioner McPherson discussed 3 potential changes to the department's proposal. The first is, if you refer to your packet, the first thing Mr. Tuma discussed and Commissioner Corville was asking about, the tagging and positive sex identification, and essentially how you split up the meat at the camp amongst multiple people. So as the department proposed it, Commissioner McPherson, correct me if I'm wrong here, Commissioner McPherson is proposing to add a sentence at the end of that just essentially points back to the tagging requirements to clarify everybody what they have to do. So the sentence would say, possessors of any portion of a deer or wild turkey which has been divided in camp or field without evidence of positive sex identification shall affix a tag in accordance with Louisiana Administrative Code, Title 76, Part 19, 11D11, identifying the sex of the animal. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'd like to offer that at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it. And just a quick comment in that regard, maybe on the handout, the book handout, you could have a sample tag to make it absolutely almost as easy as possible where somebody could use that. And you may already have that now, but that'd be nice for somebody to have.
I don't know if we have it this year. I know in the past we did have possession tags in the back of the hunting pamphlet.
No, I'm not suggesting providing one, but have it, in the printed
Right.
deal where they could
Okay.
make a Xerox copy of it and it would just be fill in the
But
blank.
we do actually provide possession tags where they can just clip them out just as a convenience.
However, as long as it doesn't cost any more money. I mean, printing it's.
Yes, sir.
It's just ink.
I guess we can vote on these as we go. So any discussion on this amendment?
You get a second, Mr. Chairman?
I do.
Yes. Mr. Corville, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment number 1 has been accepted.
The second change Commissioner McPherson requested is very similar. This is on DMAP tagging requirements. This is in section 11, and it would just add a sentence that says, see DMAP regulations in Louisiana Administrative Code, Title 76, Part 5, Section 111, for deer management assistance tagging requirements on lands enrolled in DMAP.
Any discussion?
Basically, Mr. Chairman, the language kind of ignored Tier 1 DMAP, which requires bucks and does to be tagged. It also clarified what we talked about last year about that if you only hunt in the DMAP club, you don't have to have the other tags issued to you.
But you do now.
No. We clarified that last year, that if you only hunt on DMAP property, then you don't have to apply for the deer tags. Your DMAP tags suffices.
So we have a motion.
Yes, I'll
And
make that motion.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. We probably should go back and revote on that previous one and ask if there's any public comment before y'all vote
Okay.
on these changes. I apologize for
I
that.
ask that we reconsider that vote, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any discussion? Any public comment? Okay. Now we'll vote on it. All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I apologize for that. So back to Commissioner McPherson's second amendment on the DMAP tagging. I don't know if y'all have any further discussion on that, or if y'all are ready to entertain a
Any
motion.
public comment?
So if I have a DMAP harvested animal, you kill it, you want to share it with me, I tag it from my little package, that's what you're addressing. And I'll prove the sex ID.
I think it clarifies the DMAP tagging requirements. And it just refers them back that if you're hunting on a DMAP club, then you need to go back and read the DMAP regulations on tagging. Which
Do we
would,
want to just bring it into this section, into that section?
That's exactly what it does. Yeah, it just provides a cross-reference for people. Instead of trying to repeat it, it says, go to the next section and
You're
read
not
DMAP.
gonna rewrite it, you're gonna make them, you're gonna send them somewhere else in that book that's like this that can be problematic to read.
Correct.
Now, I think just to maybe muddy the water a little bit, you only do not need your deer tags if you're in tier 1 because you get a tag. But if you're in the other tiers, you have to have that antler tag. So revisiting what you asked about, Chad, and so that the tagging requirements are spelled out in the DMAP section that they're referring to. So just so everybody's not confused, that there are different tagging requirements for tier 1 and tier 2, 3. Okay.
you would have to tag the buck.
Correct, but Chad said you indicated you did not have to have the tags if you're in tier 1. That's only applicable to tier 1.
No discussion. See no public comments. We have a motion by Commissioner McPherson and a second by Commissioner Corville.
I didn't take that. I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor? Excellent.
All right, the third change requested by Commissioner McPherson is under section E8 on using dogs to trail and retrieve wounded deer. So it would modify a section that currently says this, and this all would be deleted. A leashed dog may be used to trail and retrieve wounded or unrecovered deer during legal hunting hours. Any dog used to trail or retrieve wounded or unrecovered deer shall have on a collar with the owner's name, address, and phone number. In addition, a dog may be used to trail and retrieve unrecovered deer during legal hunting hours. And that would be replaced with this. A dog may be used to trail and retrieve wounded or unrecovered deer. The dog must be leashed during legal hunting hours, but may be unleashed after legal hunting hours. Any dog used to trail or retrieve wounded or unrecovered deer shall have on a collar with the owner's name, address, and phone number.
I think that's just a technical amendment. Clean it up.
Yeah, so it's just requiring that it does not, it can be unleashed after legal hunting hours.
And prior to it couldn't.
Correct. Is that correct, Commissioner
We
McPherson?
talked about this last year, didn't we?
Seems like we did.
You could have a dog that was unleashed after legal hunting hours. This is basically just rewording the regulation as I appreciate it.
I think the attempt was just to make it clear.
Yeah.
Where somebody put it in plain language that somebody would understand.
Yeah, it had a lot of legal jargon in it, so it was probably just a rewrite of the existing regulation.
Yeah. What was explained to me is you keep your dog on the leash during the day so that you don't allow it to go on an accompanying club and maybe mess up their hunt. But at night, you don't have that requirement, so you can have an unleashed dog. And good luck to anybody that can keep a dog on a leash at any time.
And what's the penalty if the dog goes
Well, there was also, we had a lot of discussion, and I think Randy was doing the regulations at that time, but as appreciated, there was also a lot of discussion whether people were using that potential unleashed dog as an ability to deer dog hunt in those areas that was closed. So that's why there's a leash during the daylight hours.
Right. Any public comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. And all in favor? Motion passed.
And one final thing, Chairman Hogan, I think in your packet may be some language from Senate Bill 100 from Senator Allain from the 2019 general session. I don't know if it's appropriate if it's not in there. Well, Senate Bill 100 from the 2019 general session was it basically the nighttime permit for hogs. It changed the allowable weapon use. It's changed the allowable weapon use, and it also allowed so you can have an unplugged shotgun to hunt hogs, and then you can also shoot hogs from a moving vehicle. I don't know if the appropriate thing would be to ask for an amendment, and I could take that language directly from 56 and from his law and put it into 76. And Ms. Susan and I can work on inserting that language in 76. That way we're not contradictory to 50, the law.
I'm going to offer the amendment at Mr. Timmer's request, just so that we will be in compliance with the legislative law on this. I'd like to simplify it. If you could just say that you can use anything to kill a hog 24 hours a day, 365 days, except an atomic bomb. And just get past all of this.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest that you guys draft it up? I mean, we have 3 months to consider amendments. We're not in a,
Well, it would be a potpourri amendment next month, so it would drag this process out another month.
okay,
And so
no,
the
I don't
issue,
want to do that.
the issue I have now is, as Mr. Boggs went over the process, I already have the hunting regulations pamphlet to the printer in May. And so if y'all ever change anything, it's going to create a big time problem.
We're going to change it.
So working, you're unique, as I said, Commissioner Gordon. But yeah,
I'm going to withdraw my amendment and offer the language suggested by Mr. Timmer.
Yeah, if it's just what's in law, because not being able to read it, I don't really want to
right.
vote on something.
And I apologize. I should have I had a copy on my desk. I don't know why I didn't bring it down with me, but Miss Susan and I will just copy it straight from the law and insert it into 76.
Any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I enjoyed your chairmanship. You've been very professional, very classy.
Thank you,
So
Tommy Tuma.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if there's further discussion of changes anyone has. That was the
Oh, yeah.
only ones we had.
Any further?
Like Al said, I think we still haven't considered the NOI as amended.
So that'd be next. If there's
That's correct, unless anyone has any changes before
additional
that.
amendments. So any discussion?
Am I making that motion? All right.
Sure.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
And, I'm sorry, public comment.
Public comment? No public comment. All in favor? Excellent. Good job, Tommy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Boggs, appreciate your help in this.
And Mr. Chairman, we should probably reconsider the DMAP NOI as amended, since I forgot to remind y'all to do public comment before that one as well.
I think I asked for public comment on that one, but we
Did
can
you?
do it
Oh,
again.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 12, election of a chairman and a vice chairman. So we're going to open the floor for nominations for chairman first.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Commissioner Jerry Smitko in absentia.
Any other nominations for chairman?
Move to close these nominations.
Nominations are closed. If y'all are in favor of that, all in favor? And the way I understand it, if there's only one nominee, then Commissioner Smitko has been elected by acclamation. Congratulations, Jerry. I hope you're listening in. Now we'll open the floor for nominations for vice chairman. Commissioner Goodrick.
I move to nominate Joe McPherson, vice chairman.
Excellent. Any other nominations?
Motion to close.
Motion to close. And Commissioner McPherson has been elected vice chairman by acclamation.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good.
You want to give a speech?
That was the easiest election I ever had.
You want to deliver a speech or an address?
Didn't have to raise a dime.
Well, let's set a May commission meeting date.
6.
We have a motion for May 6th. Commissioner Corville going to second it since he won't be there. All in favor? And public comment.
I'm going to be brief. I should have said this in personal privilege, but I'd like to compliment the department again on your CWD testing. I got my results in 2 weeks. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's an incredible service that you guys provide to the deer hunters of this state, and you guys should be commended for the work that you've done and the veterinary staff have done with coordinating with LSU. Outstanding. That's a reduction in time from 5 months from the year prior.
Anything else?
Motion adjourned.